Thanks. Okay, so as we do, good Motzaei Shabbos to everyone, and Erev Rosh Chodesh, tonight's Rosh Chodesh, ready? And so we have the custom that we tell a story of the Baal Shem Tov or other tzaddikim on Motzaei Shabbos. Thank you, Judith, for the inspiration. So while I'm waiting for my computer to load up here, we'll start with the second story. There's a story that was told about we possibly told the story already, but either way, there's a story told about the mayor of Parmesan. We learned about him. He was a big tzaddik, Chassidish Rebbe, and a tremendous Ruach HaKodesh. And so the mayor of Parmesan was known that people would come to him for advice. Hey, Rebecca Shvuto, people would come to Remeir Parmesan for advice from all walks of town, all types of people from all places. Even tzaddikim, even the righteous people would come to ask Remeir Parmesan for advice. So there was once a person who wanted to come to Eretz Yisrael. And coming to Eretz Yisrael, he decided to get the blessing. He was a tzaddik, and he was going to fly him and his whole family to Eretz Yisrael to take a boat. And he comes to Remeir Parmesan to ask him for a bracha, and bracha should be successful, and also try to figure out how he's going to actually make it practically work. So Remeir Parmesan says, "What's your plan? How are you going to afford to fly take a boat to Eretz Yisrael? It costs so much money, and there's no parnasa there. What are you planning to do that's going to help you to have parnasa?" So he said, "I plan on going to different family members, slowly raising money, and hopefully I'll raise the money I need to come to Eretz Yisrael." So Remeir Parmesan's thinking. He says, "I'm not sure that's a good idea. I have a better idea. I'll make a deal with you. So I think, how much do you need to go to Eretz Yisrael? So you need 400 ruble, let's say, the money, the currency was. And then you could travel with the boat and pay the sea fee and all the things and get it started in Eretz Yisrael. So stay with me, and I will take it upon myself to raise for you the money to go to Eretz Yisrael." So the tzaddik is thinking, he says, "Wow, that's amazing. I'm so grateful. Of course, I'll take that agreement. I'll come to that agreement, and we'll go together, and I'll wait here until you're ready to send me to Eretz Yisrael. Anything you need me to do." Okay. And then Remeir Parmesan kind of didn't indicate, like you usually would, that the audience was over. So the person didn't leave. And then he told the gabbai to let the next person. So the gabbai opens the door, and in walks in a wealthy-looking person, and he sees this other man standing there. So he thinks maybe he shouldn't go in. So he stands by the door. He doesn't go, he goes back out. And finally, Remeir Parmesan says, "Come inside." So he comes inside. And before he has a chance to say anything, Remeir Parmesan says, "I want to tell you a story." And he says, "and I want this person to listen to the story as well." So he says, there's a person in a city, very super wealthy person. His name is Avigdor. Avigdor is a very, very wealthy person. But one thing, he was a mamish, a miser. He would never give tzedakah. People would knock on his door and ask for help and ask for support and ask anything. He would tell them he can't help them. But what he would do was, he would say, he knew that his neighbor, who was not a rich man at all, but a very kind heart, his name was Motzaei, says, "You know what? I can't help you, but Motzaei would help you." And he would send everyone to Motzaei, and of course Motzaei helped, even though it was very difficult for him. He wasn't a person of means, but he was a righteous person. He didn't, someone came asking for help. What are you going to say? No. He'd give them food. He'd do the best he can, and that's how it went on for years. And the people in the village, in the city, they all respected Motzaei as being a very God-fearing person. But as things are in the world, they respected this Avigdor even more, even though He never helped anyone, never did anything for everyone. Was very cheap, very miser, very selfish. But he had money, so people like to respect people with money, even though there's no reason for it if the person's not behaving properly with this money. So this continued, and still there was a situation where in heaven they decided it's not right. It's not right. This person in Victor was blessed with such health, such wealth, and such ability to help. And this Matisyahu, it's so hard for him. Why don't we just take the money and give it to Matisyahu and take it away from Avigdor? And there was a whole court case, and it was decided that they're going to take the money away from Avigdor. He's going to become a poor person, and and everything is going to go to Matisyahu. So before the decree is about to be sealed, Eliyahu Navi, Elijah the prophet, we talk about Eliyahu Navi on Motzei Shabbos, Eliyahu Navi, Eliyahu Tishbi. He says, and he comes and he says, no, you have to give this person another chance. It's not right. You have to give him a chance. Let me go down and test him one time. So Eliyahu Navi comes down as a poor person. He knocks on the door of the Avigdor. And the servant opens up. Now the servant is a nice person, but the servant knows that his master won't let anyone. He says, "What do you do? You can't be here. You have to leave." So he says, No, I just need to eat something. I'm hungry. Just give me something to eat. He goes, No, really, you gotta go. You have to leave. He says, okay, let me just come inside just to warm up for a second. It's freezing cold. It's the winter, and I'll get my energy and I'll go on my way. No, you have to leave. Meantime, a Victor comes downstairs and goes, what's this? He says, this person wants to come in, and he knew that his master would be very upset. He said, throw him out, get out. He said, we have nothing for you here, leave. And Elijah the prophet kept them pleading and crying. He told the servant, grab him by his clothes and throw him out. So he threw him out on the street. Now Elijah the prophet starts pounding on the door. He says, please just have mercy. He's crying, and literally there's no answer. And now Elijah the prophet realizes there's nothing you could do. The court case is it's going to be sealed. So he comes back to heaven with he doesn't have good news to give over, because the person was as they reported him to be, a person that doesn't behave properly. So he says they're about to give the verdict of the person is going to be, this Avigdor is going to lose all his money. It's no go to Matisyahu. And before they're about to give the verdict, Rameir Pamashtan says, when I heard this story, I came to heaven and I said, absolutely not. You're not going to take, and he rises, his voice rises. We're not going to let this decree go through until I personally give him another warning. He has to hear clearly that if he doesn't change his ways, he's going to lose everything, but we have to give him a second warning. And now Rameir Pamashtan turns to this wealthy man who's standing in front of him. He says, Avigdor, you have one last warning. You can either change your ways, or I'm telling you now, in heaven, they're going to take everything away from you. And this was the wealthy man standing in front of him. He says, here's a gentleman that has to go to Eretz Yisrael. If you give him 400 rubles that he needs to go to Eretz Yisrael, then that will be the start, the path of forgiveness. And from there, you could change your ways. If you don't, I want you to know this is your final warning. The person fainted. Doesn't say why the person came to see the Rameir Pamashtan, but something brought him there. When he woke up, he realized his mistake. He took out his wallet, wrote a check for 400 rubles, and this person was very happy to be able to go to Eretz Yisrael. And of course, Avigdor went home and changed his ways, and it became the house that everyone knew that you could find the warm meal, support, tzedakah that you would need. Second quick story, which I heard the story in the name of the Orach Chaim Kodesh, but here Rabbi Tillis tells the story in the name of Rabbi Chaim Toledano, which was a Rav in Morocco, in Sale, Morocco. He was a Chacham in Sale, Morocco. He was the Chacham of Sale, and he was a very, very, very hospitable person. He always had guests. And at least he had a custom that no matter what, he always, every Yom Tov, he had to have, even though not always was it easy to have a guest, not always was their guest available, he always had to have at least one guest. And if he didn't have a guest, so he would send his servant, his attendant, his shamish, to go to the shuls where people may be passing through and find someone who doesn't have a meal for it to come to him for Yom Tov. So he comes one Shavuos. He comes to he waits to try to find guests. He doesn't find guests. So he sends his attendant, of course, to look around. And this mamash, he comes back this time, says, Rebbe, there's nothing. There's no guests. So he says, go maybe go one more time. And if you don't find someone, maybe in the cemetery you'll find someone. So the attendant thought that was weird advice, but he goes again, he looks, he doesn't see anyone. So he doesn't see anyone. He has no choice. He goes to the cemetery. He goes to the cemetery, he sees a person there, Pashat, crying crazy bitter tears, out of control. As much as the attendant tries to talk to him and ask him what's going on, maybe come to my master for Yom Tov, relax, nothing, he couldn't talk. He couldn't catch himself. So he runs back to Reb Chaim Toledano and this attendant, and he tells him, I did find someone in the cemetery, but he's hysterically crying. There's nothing I could do to help him. I can't calm him down. I wanted to bring him as a guest, even just to help him, even if he doesn't want to come as a guest. So Reb Chaim Toledano grabs his stick. He runs to the cemetery. He comes to the cemetery. He sees this person, Pashat, sobbing and sobbing. So finally, Reb Chaim Toledano says, tell me, please, what's bothering you? So he says, I'll tell you. He says, I was a poor person, and I traveled outside of the country to make a living, to try to make a parnasa. And I was able to find success in my travels, and I gather after many years or months, whatever it is, of work, I left my family and I came back with a nice amount that I earned to start a new life for us. And I came with the boat this morning, and I was rushing with all my stuff on the boat. And as I crossed onto the dry land, I tripped and I dropped my suitcase that had all my money that I spent all this time to collect and start a new life for my family, my kids, my wife, and I have nothing. And I can't go home. I can't go home. It's just too horrible. I can't go back to my situation. I'm mamish. So Reb Chaim Toledano was thinking, he says, listen, I have an agreement for you. You come to me for Shabbos. But if I find you your treasure, then you come to me for Shabbos. He says, okay, for sure. So he says, he takes him take me to where you dropped the package. So your suitcase of your funds, diamonds, gold, whatever it was. So he takes him to the place where the port. Reb Chaim Toledano starts saying, again, I heard the story of the Orach Chaim Kodesh, but here it doesn't. It says that it happened with Reb Chaim Toledano. So he's standing by the beach, and he says a few of God's holy names, and all of a sudden a big rush in the rivers, the ocean starts to stir and stir and stir until all of a sudden lifts up, as if the bed of the ocean lifted up, and all the treasures that were in the ocean were in front of this person. Chaim Toledano says, listen, find your treasure, don't dare touch anything else. You have one opportunity, the sea is ready to give you back what it took, but don't take anything that's not yours. So he looks, he finds his suitcase, and he takes it. He's so happy, and the water goes down. And as he made an agreement with Reb Chaim Toledano, he says, I will come to you for Shavuos. So two nice stories that are connected to good deeds, the people that, certain things that happen, funny things happen when tzaddik is around. So let's go to our class tonight. I'm running on another computer. The internet was down in the office here. So let's see if we could find where we're holding. Okay, we're learning the laws of the Chazaras HaShatz, the repetition of the Amidah. Okay, so we learned, I think law number 2 was, we learned about that the Chazaras HaShatz, when the Chazzan repeats the Shemoneh Esrei, he has to make sure that he has a minyan of 9 listeners. Okay, so now he starts with law number 3. Hashliach tzibur tzarich lizoher kishu misayim bracha achas shlo lahascha bracha shniya. So now the Shulchan Aruch is giving, the Kitzur is giving instruction to the Chazzan not to swallow or rush too fast his words. So when he finishes a blessing, he should not start the next blessing until the people had time to respond to his blessing and say Amen. He says Roi Vatzibur, means if some people are, again, we go after the congregation. If some people individually are slow responding, etc., he doesn't have to wait for every person to say Amen. Then that itself could become a challenge. But again, everything has to be done in a normal average pace. Let's say he doesn't do that. He right away goes from one blessing into the next. So it's too late. They can't say Amen. Once he says Ata Gibor, he didn't leave time for them to say Amen. But now they can't say Amen on the previous blessing because the Chazzan went into the next blessing. And here the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch says that the penalty for not saying Amen is on the Chazzan. There's a penalty if you hear a bracha and you don't say Amen. That's in the case where you have the ability to respond. But here the Chazzan's rushing and swallowing his words, so you don't have time to respond. It's not your fault. Okay, there's no footnotes on this. It's quite simple. No, it's not simple, but straightforward. The Kedusha, when it comes to saying the Kedusha, which we know after Ata Gibor, there's in the weekday the short Kedusha, and Shabbos the long Kedusha. That applies to Mincha and Musaf as well. Is Yizor Kol Echad Lichavin Raglo. When we say the Kedusha, you don't just walk around, or just stand casually. You should join your feet together. Sheyishtem biyachad, you should be together, ki'ilu regel echaz, as if you have one foot. Why? Because the Kedusha is learned from the angels. Because it says about the angels that their feet are like a foot, like 1 foot. And so therefore we are copying the angels that have one idea of a foot, and therefore we should have our feet together as if we have 1 foot. Kodesh, 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 and we say the Kodesh 3 times. Also Baruch Shem, Baruch Shem, and also Yimlach Hashem Le'el Ma'achsil and David Hallelujah. We lift up our body, like to jump up, and our heels. So we keep our toes together, and we lift up our heels and our body to be like jumping upwards. Let's make sure my brain's a little freeze. Hashem Im. Sorry. And then he says, so this is what Aaron, who's not here with us tonight, he says he has the custom to do this, to lift your eyes upwards when we say the Kodesh, Baruch Kvarid Hashem Im Koime and Yimlech Hashem Le'elam Al-Hayachzian. So we move our body up, keep our feet together, we're moving our heels up, our toes are connected still to the ground, and we look up towards heaven. And here he says, you put your face up towards heavens, but try to keep your eyes to be preferably closed when you do that. Okay, and this is the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. We're not going into so much the reasoning behind this, but this is what he says is how we say the Kedusha. So then what happens? The Chazzan continues the repetition of the Shemoneh Esrei. He does the first 2 blessings. After the first 2 blessings is the Kedusha. When we do the Kedusha, we have our feet together and we move upwards our body by Kodesh, Baruch, and Yimlech. Our faces should be tilted upwards with our eyes preferably closed. And the Chazzan continues with the Ata Kodesh and the remainder of the 18 brachos, and we answer Amen. And he says it in a nice pace so we can answer Amen. And like we learned before, better to follow along with the Siddur. When the Shliach Tzibur, when the Chazzan reaches Moedim, which is again the general blessings, right? We have the blessing, the beginning blessings, the end blessings, the middle blessings change depending on what day it is. Today's Rosh Chodesh, so we're going to have a special davening for Musaf. The Mincha has, we have Shabbos, different Yom Tif coming up this week. We have different in between, but always the first and the last are the same, unless it's Rosh Hashanah where we have the additions. And in the middle, during the week, is the main blessings that we ask for things. So now that we finished asking our requests, we reach Modim, Mishtachvim kol hakahol, everyone bows with the Chazzan. Moedim derabanan, we say the short moedim. Now, many shuls, preferably you have your siddur in front of you, but not always are you with the minyan. Not always are you even part of the minyan. But you answer moedim derabanan, the rabbinic moedim, which is the short moedim. Many shuls today will have moedim on posters in or around the shul for people to be able to read it off the wall if they don't have a siddur and they're available. What about a person if you hear the Chazzan saying Shemoneh Esrei? Now here, I shouldn't say, we're going to learn in a second. Here he says that we say the Rabbanon, the Moedim Rabbanon, Kula B'Ishtakva. The whole Moedim, the Rabbanon, we should say while we're bowing. We'll see the footnotes in a second. If that's the custom for everyone, to be bowed during the entire Moedim Rabbanan, or do we just bow in the beginning and stand straight for the rest of the Moedim Rabbanan? So this is, again, Moedim Rabbanan is the Moedim that the congregation says when the Chazzan is holding Moedim. So the Chazzan will say the regular Moedim of Shemoneh Esrei, and the congregation says the rabbinic Moedim. So here he says we stay bowing until we complete the Moedim. What about a person, and that happens sometimes, you're davening a little behind, and you're still in the silent Shemoneh Esrei. The Chazzan waited for 10 men and started repetition, not everyone was holding with. So when he comes to, and you hear the Chazzan holding Moedim, what do you do? If you're in the middle of a blessing while this happens, that you hear the Chazzan holding Moedim, Mishtachva Gamkin, then you should also just bow. But if you're in the beginning of a blessing, or at the end of the blessing, which by bowing would be as if you're adding an additional bowing to the beginning and end of a blessing, you should not bow. Because as we learned before, there's only 4 bowings, which is the beginning and end of the first blessing, the beginning and end of the moedim, and then the 5th time when you take 3 steps backwards. So here, if you're going to be in the beginning of the blessing and you're holding, and the Chazzan's holding moedim, by bowing there, it's going to be as if you're adding an additional bowing. But if you're in the middle of the blessing, it's the middle of the blessing. It's clearly connected to what the Chazzan is saying versus what you're saying. As we said before in chapter 18, law 11. Okay, so this one has footnotes. So let's jump right in. We have 6. What is the Talmud? What is the Moedim D'Rabbanan? So I just actually should refresh with this. I just learned it in the Gemara Sota. The Talmud Sota teaches that during the time in which the Chazzan says Moedim aloud, it is propriety is for a person to add a short supplication. A number of the rabbis said a short prayer. Rav Papa concludes that the prayers are proper, and our version is a composite of all, and is therefore called Moedim D'Rabbanan, the Moedim of the rabbis. Meaning, it's not D'Rabbanan meaning rabbinic, but rabbis. Why is it rabbis? Because the Gemara Saita says that different rabbis would say what they would say when the Chazzan says Moedim. So one would say Moedim Nachlach, another one would say continuation of it, right? Shatu Hashem Elokeinu v'Kevitzeinu Heikol Basar Yitzreinu. And the other one would say Yeritz Abrasius Rakas Vaydais. Each person in the Talmud said what they would say. So Rav Papa says we take everything they said and we combine it to one Moedim of the rabbis. Okay, when I say rabbis, we're coming to say it's the rabbis, and not rabbinic, so to say, as far as like a rabbinic law, but it's to put together the tefillah of the rabbis. Okay, so what does he say you should do? He says that you should bow the entire Moedim. So he says like this: some bow only at the beginning until before Adonai, and at the conclusion. So he says some people only bow at the beginning until we say Moedim Menachem Sha'ato Hu Hashem. When they say Hashem, they get up and then they bow again towards the conclusion. Okay, number 8, he says. What are we saying? If you are in the midst of the bracha, you should also bow. In other words, while you're continuing your own prayer, you don't say the Moedim, you just bow. If you're listening and you're middle of a blessing, not the beginning and end of a blessing. But in the beginning of the blessing, he says, then you should not you shouldn't bow, because then it would be making an addition to the bowing that we have. Okay, we'll do one more law and we'll complete the class. Before the Chazzan says the Sim Shalom. So you said the modem, you completed the modem. The next blessing is Sim Shalom, is a blessing for peace. Omer. Then the Chazzan says, and depending if you're in Eretz Yisrael or not, or if it's in the time of Chag, etc., we say Elokeinu v'Elokeinu v'Seinu Barcheinu, which is, we say the priestly blessing. Now, in a place where there's no Kohanim or there's no Birchat Kohanim, so the Chazzan says Elokeinu v'Elokeinu v'Seinu, which is a blessing. Barcheinu, bless us with the blessing of the Kohanim. In Eretz Yisrael, most people have the custom that we do Birchas Kohanim in Shachris of every Shachris and Musaf, if it's like today Rosh Chodesh. If there's no Kohanim, then we say Elokeinu v'Elokeinu v'Seinu. During Yom Tov, everyone says has the Birchas Kohanim. Again, this is not the custom for everyone. Some people have the custom when the Chazzan says Yivarechecha Hashem v'yishmerecha, you shouldn't answer Amen. You should say Ken Yehi Ratzin, so may it be God's will, and then do not say Amen. We'll see. Obviously, the footnotes are going to say that there's other customs like Chabad. We do say Amen. That after the second and third blessing of the Kohanim, they should say Ken Yehi Ratzon and not say the Amen. And again, we only say the Elokeinu v'Elokeinu v'Seinu in the morning or the Musaf davening, not during a fast. Why not during a fast? Not during the afternoon prayer, because the Kohanim will never bless in the afternoon prayer. Why? Because the Kohanim are not allowed to bless after they've had alcohol. And because it's possible they had alcohol during lunch, so therefore we never do by mincha Elokeinu v'Elokeinu v'Seinu. What about on a fast day? Because if it's a fast day, and if it's a fast day, the Kohanim anyways wouldn't be eating, therefore they wouldn't be drinking, and therefore they wouldn't be after consumption of alcohol or wine. So therefore we would say the Elokeinu v'Elokeinu v'Seinu in mincha of a fast day. Okay, this again, not always the custom. In Minig Yerushalayim is, because I've been in the house of an Avelis in Yerushalayim, the Minig Yerushalayim is that they do have priestly blessings in the house of a mourner, but traditionally the custom is not to have the priestly blessings in the house of a mourner. And also, like we're mourning on this 9th of Av, we also do not even add the Birchat Kohanim or the Chazzan's blessing of the Kohanim on the Tisha B'Av. Okay, let's see 10, 11, 12. 9, 11, 12. 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, he's saying, when we reach the Yishmerecha, the end of the first bracha of the third brachas mishulashes, three-folded bracha. So he says you should say Ken Yehi Ratzon, so may it be your will. And we do not say Amen. Okay, it doesn't mention any other customs. Chabad's custom is we do say Amen. We don't say Ken Yehi Ratzon. The same applies when we reach V'yichoneka and Shalom, the end of the three blessings, the end of the second and third brachas of the three-folded bracha. I'm surprised he doesn't mention the custom. Okay, we don't say the mincha, unlike the usual practice of saying Shalom Rav at mincha. Why? The reason is because, like we said, the Kohanim could be after alcohol, so they wouldn't do a Birchas Kohanim. Okay. Any questions? Alrighty, let's stop here. And thank you all for joining. Shvuah Tov. And it's good to get a few halachos right into the week and some few nice stories of tzaddikim. We'll see you all as Hashem next class. Take care.
Thank you.